Hey guys, and welcome back to the Trevor May Baseball YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be fairly in-depth, but it is a breakdown of the 2021 season, a season recap, if you will. But a lot of people think that I'm going to be breaking down our team and how everyone did and all that kind of stuff. And there will be a little elements of that, but mostly this is going to be breaking down myself, and it's going to be going in several parts. I set goals before every season, so we'll go over the goals I set last year, how well we achieved those things. We're going to go over some statistical performance stuff and breaking down what I look at, what I don't look at, what's good, what's not so good. And then we're going to go over some goals that are being set for 2022, and then what we're going to do in the offseason to put yourself in the best position to achieve those goals. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around for the video. I will try to make it not too horribly long, so you're being lectured at. There will be stuff on the screen and stuff to follow along with. It'll be very easy, but I thought it would be interesting to kind of see how this whole process goes. So let's get into the goals. Did we accomplish every single goal that we set? So before we break these things down one by one, I would love for you guys to understand that these things are varying in level of control that I personally have over them. So some of them are just like not accomplished because I couldn't do everything to make them happen, but they're still goals nonetheless. So firstly, wanted to stay healthy all 162. That's big deal for me, spending several years in the middle of my career with a lot of red ink, being hurt, and I wanted to avoid that. So taking the ball whenever I'm needed is very important to me, and I'm happy to say that I accomplished that this year. Make the playoffs. I know we didn't do it, but every time you fail in such a way, it sticks with you, and it gives you that much more fire moving into the next season. So I know that's not necessarily the most ideal thing to happen. Anytime you can get a little extra boost to get better, you got to take it. CQR 60% plus. Really quickly, CQR is command quality ratio. Command quality ratio. And I'll explain what that means more in the statistical analysis, but we did not actually hit 60% on it, 57%. It's just how well you commanded pitches, but I'll break that down later in this video. Record all outings, physical data. I have full control over this. I actually wanted to make a video and do some nerd research on how performance was being attached to a lot of different indicators like how well I slept that night, how well I recovered, my heart rate, all that kind of stuff. I wanted to see how actual stuff on the field was attached to some of the physical data that I was recording. So we will get into that's going to get its whole other video, but I felt like I did a good job of recording a lot of that information. Improve my movement profile. Movement profile, again, we're going to break that down later in the video. But the movement profile, continue to make your stuff better, maximizing the physics on your pitches, and trying to make them as high quality as possible. And I did a lot of good stuff there. But there's other things to be desired, which we will break down later. Lower the walk rate from 2022. But I felt like my walk rate, my walks per 9 innings, was a little bit high last year. I know it was only 24 innings, last year being 2020. It was only 24 innings, but I walked a few more people. This year, it was slightly up too, but again, intentional walks were a thing this year that more so. I think I had 2 intentional walks in my career up to this year, and I had 4 this year. So sometimes you just got to say, yeah, there's nothing I could do. We put a guy on first base and it just counted as a walk. So I'm not super worried about that. It was close, but I would like to bring it down and then improve my diet and play at 245 pounds. I found out in spring training I was a little bit sluggish at the weight I was at, about 255. I wanted to just shave a little bit of weight off. Wasn't in a hurry. We shaved some off. We got to 245, and I felt great all year. Now that's 4 for 7. 4 for 7 goals, but the major ones that I didn't accomplish, the biggest one, right, the make the playoffs, not fully in my control, but I could have done more, I feel like, on my end to at least get us closer. You could always do more, so that's unfortunate. That's a goal that's just always good. It's just default. It's always going to be there. I want to make the playoffs. I want to win a World Series. That you got to take it with a grain of salt and know that you only have so much control. And the CQR and the lower the walk rate, those are statistical things that I used to push myself, and they were actually pretty close. It wasn't like they weren't major failures. They were like just missed the mark. So it's like you could give yourself a B rating on those as opposed to an A, which would have been passing. So let's talk a little bit about what a couple of these things are that I said I was going to explain later. Namely, the CQR, command quality ratio. CQR is, and also movement profile is too. And let's look at some of the numbers that I use to break these things down, because those two items are work to really closely together to remove the actual on the field results from the way I think about success, because there's so many things that go into your stat line for the day with like defense, freaking weather, all kinds of stuff, right? Luck has a lot to do with it. And I try to remove as much of that as I can so I can distill only my performance out of what I have full control over in preparation, all kind of stuff. I try to distill it down so that I can look at only what I have control over and determine whether or not I did that well enough in order to be successful overall. Put myself in a position so that all the luck and all the other stuff won't affect me as much. So let's start with CQR. CQR is a stat that I made up. Right? I keep track of it on my own, and I have a system where I go back, I watch the video of every pitch I threw the day before. I usually know what I was trying to do with each pitch, so I can give myself a point per time I threw the pitch I wanted to throw exactly in the spot I wanted to throw. It doesn't matter if it was hit hard or if it doesn't matter what the result of the pitch after I throw it was, just that I threw it where I wanted to and hit the spot. I give myself half a point when I go for a spot and I miss in a quality place. Namely 1-2, I'm trying to go fastball up and away and I just miss above the zone, but they take it. But again, it was a good miss that isn't going to hurt me probably, and will more likely than not get me the result I wanted to. That can get half a point, right? As opposed to if I'm trying to go 0-2 with a slider and I throw it right down the middle, the guy just takes it because it fooled him because he thought it was a fastball up. That's a ball, or that is a 0 because I did not want to throw it right down the middle. That will hurt me more often than not. So, though the results were good and not so good on those two things, I saw one as a success and one as not a success. So that I keep track of that entire ratio for the whole season. I did it for 45 outings this year. And I give myself a percentage. How many points out of the total number of pitches do you throw? 60+% is good, because what became my goal just because of the trends I saw in the first few. So I set the goal like 5 outings in. I was like, you know what? If I'm 60+%, if I'm more than 60%, I'm successful most of the time. And if I'm below 60%, I have a higher chance of having a tough outing. That's kind of where I saw the line. So I set that as the line. I actually got 57%, but we'll talk a lot more about that in a breakdown video of all that kind of stuff that attaches it to the recovery data I talked about earlier. But 57% isn't too bad. So I'm okay with that for now, but I'm going to up that going next year, and we'll talk about this year's goals in a little bit. And now let's talk about movement profile. You may hear things like vertical movement, horizontal movement, carry, high fastball guys, a horizontal, like sweeping break, all those kind of or all those kind of buzzwords go to explain exactly a pitcher's stuff. How much do their pitches move, and how do those pitches move? And when you're pitching, they all come out of the same slot. If they move drastically in different directions, you generally are more nasty. For example, a guy who did an amazing job of throwing the ball where he wanted to this year was Aaron Loop. But you combine that with the fact that he had very, very good movement on most of his pitches, translates into a sub-1 season. A little bit of luck helps too. But when you have those three things, you generally have special years, and that's what he did. He had a great. We can break that down all day till the cows come home. We might do videos on that. But that is what I mean by movement profile. And specifically to me, I have carry, meaning my fastball defies gravity. I had the highest carry of my career this year. I have very good vertical movement on my slider. It was almost just about the highest in my career. And I have some of the best, because I throw a straight changeup that doesn't go off movement. It was going to be velocity separation from my fastball that made it good. I had the highest velocity separation between my fastball and my changeup of my career. So those three things were my indicators of how good the stuff is on each pitch, and I felt like they all improved from 2020 to 2021. So now you kind of understand what those two pillars of like indicators for, am I primed to be successful on the mound? If I am locating my pitches where I want to most of the time, or making quality pitches in the way that I want to most of the time, over 60% of the time, and my stuff is really good, those are the punch out the side days. Those are the days where you feel unstoppable, and you want to create as many of those days as possible. So you got to look at how often it happens and what factors go into them. So let's talk specifically first about CQR. CQR is derived from my spots diagram. I did a video a year or two ago about spots, but if you need a refresher, this is what spots is. I have created basically my default. These are where I want to throw my pitches. So if you look, I want to be down and away from variety with the slider and going below the zone with my slider because it has vertical depth. I want it to look like it's a strike until it's not. In order to do that, because of the way my slider breaks, it needs to look like in the zone, then go below, because if I try to throw it off the plate, basically if I throw a slider off the plate, it's been off the plate the whole time because I don't have very much horizontal movement. That's something I want to work on for this offseason. But as of right now, I don't. So I want to throw a slider down here. I want to throw the fastball top of the zone, and I want to be able to throw at the bottom of the zone when I need to, but never in the middle. I want to stay out of the middle of the zone with my fastball. As long as I'm out of the middle of the zone in general and up most of the time, I'm okay. And then my changeup, I want it to be in the bottom part of the zone, down and into righties, down and away to lefties, and below. So you notice everything I want to do is up or below the zone. Very few things off the plate because of the way my pitches move. I have a good understanding of how they move, and I'll show you some information on that in a minute. But when I'm most effective, I'm hitting these spots with these pitches. And if I'm in trouble or if I'm in a place where I don't feel good, these are my defaults where I'm like, okay, let's just get this there because I'm used to doing it, and that's where I want to do it. So basically, my whole pitching plan is somewhere in this diagram. This diagram represents where I'm trying to throw pretty much every single one of my pitches at any given time. Now, let's look at some actual breakdowns of where my actual pitches were. Now you can see on the screen, here's where I threw my fastball. Here's where I threw my changeup. Here's where I threw my slider. In general, slider was a little bit too much, but towards the end of the year, it was more in the zone and better hitting that down and away square in the strike zone. If you're going to throw a strike, you want it to be there. If you're going to throw not a strike, you want it to be below that. That's simply all there is. That's all you're trying to do, or all I'm trying to do. And in general, it got better as the year went on, as I focused more and more on it, but it wasn't quite at the level I wanted to be. Now the fastball was up and away from righties vast majority of the time, but at the end of the year, I was getting that top of that line of that zone really, really well for a strike, and guys had to swing at it. So generally, the fastball was okay, but I would like to use my arm side up and into righties a little bit more, hit that a little bit more successfully and a little more quality and a little more often. And I think that that could take me to the next level. And then the changeup. Changeup was awful. If you look at the locations here, there's three main, it looks like a fidget spinner. It looks like lots of changeups up. Now I have a carry changeup. My changeup carries way too much, and we'll talk about that later in the video as well. So up was okay at times. Unfortunately, you can't live there. Your changeup can't be a pitch that you're throwing up all the time. It needs to be a change of pace down in the zone. Later in the year, I started to get it down in the zone more. Got way more swings and misses, but there's going to be a revisiting of how I throw that pitch and what we're trying to accomplish there going into the season as well. If you look at this, the two pitches I did a really good job at locating within my default, within my intention, were my fastball and my slider. They happen to be on my best movement profile pitches as well. And my changeup was not located as well, but I threw lots of strikes, and I felt like I was able to throw it in the zone quite often, which is good. That's okay, but I wanted to locate it a lot better, and there's some mechanical things I think that I can change and some movement stuff I can change in order to get it down in the zone more often than up in the zone, which it was up a lot this year. Now that we know where I located all my pitches and kind of basically the CQR is basically overlapping where I actually threw the pitches with that spots that is a little bit more specific based on the game I just played. This is the overall, these are my choices for my scouting report going in the season. This is my choice for how I'm going to attack hitters this game, but let's narrow it down specifically to the team I'm playing. That's how the process of preparing for a team works. And then actually where I threw it, you just saw the three graphs, was how my CQR at the end of the day. So it's like, this is what I was trying to do. This is what I actually did. And how do those things correlate with each other? 57% of the time of the year, I generally did what I wanted to do, which wasn't quite high enough. Which led us to my stats. Somewhere on the screen right now, I'm assuming. Thanks, Marcos. You're the best. This is my actual stat line. 7-3. Which our bullpen had 50 wins this year, so ignore the wins. It doesn't really matter. That's the first. But 3.59 ERA, 68 appearances. Proud as hell of that. 68 is a career high of mine. I'll take that. Four saves. Could have done a little bit better there. 62 and 2/3 innings, 83 strikeouts. I'll take that strikeout ratio and a way too high whip, which is 126. Disclaimer: it's a 119 when you take out the intentional walks. So I'm going to do that in my head, just so I can be a sub 1-2. But you want to be around a 1 or lower as a reliever. That means you're elite. I let too many guys on base. Just in case you didn't know, WHIP is walks plus hits per inning pitch. So it's how many base runners. These are my traditional stats. Nothing crazy good. It's solid. It's okay. It's not the best ever, but it's also not the worst ever, right? But there's so much more to this story than your ERA, because again, ERA has a defense and shifts and all kinds of stuff not factored in. Like, it's just, there's a lot out of your control. The same with strikeouts and what, like, just there's a lot of things that go into it. So you got to go a little bit deeper. Because we broke down stats from an overall standpoint, let's do it per pitch. I kind of like to go from when I'm looking at expected stats, which is weighted for the park. There's all kinds of stuff that goes in expected, but basically it's like, how hard was that pitch usually hit? Because the harder it's hit, more often it is damage or produces runs. So there's all these stats that the harder something's hit, the more often it's going to be a problem. The softer it's hit, the least often it's going to produce a run. So that's kind of what expected stats are. There's a bunch of stuff that goes into it, but that's what they're trying to accomplish with those stats. You don't have to take them at face value with maybe a little grain of salt, but you get the gist. So let's look at the pitches. Let's bring them up on the screen. So on the left here, this is all through Baseball Savant, by the way. Baseball Savant is in the description. If you want to go click on it, it's my page, but you can go search anybody. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, you can go look this up on any pitcher in the major leagues. And it's super, super interesting. We're going to do a bunch of things, breaking down some of the best pitchers this year too. I think that's going to be a great video series to do. So changeup, batting average, the actual batting average, 341. At first you're like, yeah. But you go look at expected batting average, 248. Hard hit percentage, 31%. Not great, but 248 is 100 points lower. Why is that? Because in general, I know you can't see it here, the lowest exit velocity on average I had of any of my pitches was my changeup. Basically, I throw hard, I throw lots of 5 fastballs. Guys were hitting the changeups a little softer, but they were flipping them because they weren't located well enough. So they weren't being crushed. I gave up a couple homers on changeups this year, more than usual. They weren't being crushed regularly, but they were being dropped in. So there was lots of hits, but they weren't hit really, really hard on average. The weird thing is my fastball, so if you go to the bottom here, my batting average 217, expected batting average 176. Again, highest exit velo on average, because it's a fastball. Fastballs are, just disclaimer, fastballs in general for everybody are hit harder than all their other pitches. But because of all the swing and miss, the expected batting average is even lower. So I have a high whiff rate, 33%, 33% on the changeup, 30% on the slider. All 3 of my pitches swung and missed at 30+% of the time. Again, this is the 3rd year I've done this. This is a very, very good sign. Lots of swing and miss. But I digress. I don't know if you noticed, but everything but the slider, the batting average against the expected batting average was lower than the batting average, actual batting average. That is a theme with me. My expected stats are almost always lower, just because it comes down to locating. So when you look at these things, it's how hard balls are hit and everything, and those hard balls are hit, defense, shifting, parks. That's all factored in expected statistics. But execution is the thing that changes it. So when I see an expected thing should be lower, that an expected batting average or expected slugging or expected WOBA is lower, and I don't know if you notice this, all of those things are lower than the actual thing. It tells me that my command of those pitches lacked at times and got me in trouble. So when things happened, when I was being hit hard, I was being hit hard a lot in one inning. But when I was good, I was being touched. That gulf is quality of pitch. That gulf is explained by quality of pitch, which is why I came up with CQR. Generally, I'm happy with these stats, except for the changeup run value. It was just my weakest pitch, and I would like my changeup to be more of a weapon. But the usage, because my slider was such a quality, low damage pitch, I needed to throw it more. So my takeaways from here, right, as opposed to my original stat line that we saw, my takeaways, slider could be thrown a little bit more. Fastball was still high quality, but I can continue to command it a little bit better, and my changeup needs something. I need to adjust how I think about and how I use my changeup. If I have infinite confidence in all 3 of these pitches, I am in peak Trevor May, and that's what I want to accomplish. Really quickly, before we move on to talking about goals going into 2022 and subsequently what we're going to do this offseason as a plan, I wanted to give you a quick look at Savant's kind of ranking system. So they very similar to the standardized testing when you were in elementary school. You might still be in elementary school. You're rated based on percentile among the group of kids your age or people that are also in your control group, i.e. the entire major league. So all pitchers, 50% is average. So you're right in the middle of all the pitchers that have that stat. 99th percentiles, you're at the top. First percentiles, you're at the very bottom. So if you look here, I am above average in every single statistic except for walk percentage, and I'm in the top 8% in expected WOBA, weighted on base percentage, expected ERA, expecting batting average, top 8% and top 10% in K percent, and top 16% in hard hit percent, top 21% fastball spin, and top 10% in fastball velocity. Many of those stats, I am top 10% in the league. So you have to take that, say, the potential to be an absolute shutdown, 1 ERA type guy is there. It just comes down to certain times of execution and what goes into that. Now that we've seen the 2021 goals, saw how we accomplished them, we also saw our stats and how I've kind of broken them down to give myself an idea of things that I would like to improve going into 2022. Let's talk about a 2022 goal set and how we're going to move forward and point ourselves at some things that we want to accomplish going into next year that I think will translate into my best year yet. Because every single year, man, I'm going into the next season trying to have the best season that I've had. I want my best season to go until my body falls apart. I feel like I'm primed and ready to go. I have an elevated understanding of my stuff and how I can do that now. That it's just going to take 4 months of solid work, of rest and doing the right things and slowing things down and making it simple and take that into 2022. So here's my goals for 2022. Stay healthy for 162. That goal's there every year. Playoffs, obviously. Playoffs, and by extension, World freaking Series. So let's bring a trophy home, because why play this game if you don't want to win it all? CQR, I bumped it to 65% because I feel like now that it's a very clear vision in my head, I'm able to lock in on it and use that as a prime indicator of whether or not I'm doing my job well or not. I want to record every single outing as opposed to just 45 with my physical data, using my Whoop band and my Aura Ring, and maximize recovery even more, right? I'm going to even increase the number of things I'm taking with me on the road in order to help me sleep best, get my body ready to go. Maybe add some other things that I'm able to do on a day-to-day basis that make me even feel fresher going into games, which always helps. And now I've been able to break down exactly how I want to change or continue to improve the stuff on certain pitches. So I want to maximize my four-seam fastball, FF, vertical drop, meaning I want to increase my carry. I had some of the best carry in the league, but I found some ways to do it. We will break that down in just a minute. I want to design my changeup to maximize my movement. So last year, like I said, I was focused mostly on, because I throw a quote-unquote straight change that carries very similarly to my fastball, I wanted to change the velocity as much as possible. I wanted to be a 10 mile an hour plus gap on average between my fastball, my changeup. I think it was like 9.7. So we almost got there on average, in order to facilitate guys getting out in front and swinging and missing, as opposed to missing because it's moving. It's hard to quantify that using a lot of our analytical tools. And so I want to focus more on movement as opposed to difference in velocity. Maximize my slider movement, meaning I would love to continue to make that vertical movement really consistent, but I would also like to mess around, very similar to a teammate of mine, Sergio Romo. He is able to manipulate his slider to go side to side or up and down based on what he needs. I want to train myself to keep that feel. So I'm going to do a lot of like hand placement stuff, changing the grip a little bit from time to time and throwing really nice and easy into a net and just kind of feeling spin and getting slow motion camera stuff. We'll break that in a minute again, but I want to maximize the slider movement, and I want to be able to throw it at the bottom of the zone or below the zone regularly. I want it to be 0-2-0, slider. 0-3-1, slider. 0-2-1, slider. 3-0, and you're one of the best hitters in the league, slider. I want to be able to do that because, like we saw earlier, my slider had some of the best results for me this year, and they could be better it could be more of an effective pitch even if it became a weapon like that. An anytime, any place weapon. I got in patterns with it. Fastball was always my go-to. I would love to add my slider into that conversation. And then I would like to continue to lower the walk rate. I don't want to walk 1 per 9, just to be clear. Walking one, I don't want to throw so many strikes that guys know that I'm going to be in the zone all the time. I want there to be a little bit of a discrepancy. Like he might walk me. That needs to be there somewhere so that guys are hesitant to swing at stuff that's close. But I would like it lower than it was. It was almost 4. Now, as we move into how we're going to accomplish all this, we're going to focus on very specifically the 3 pitch specific goals. The maximize vertical drop on the 4-seam fastball, designed to change up to maximize movement, maximize slider movement, very horizontal variations, and improve command. How do we do those things? Because everything else, the CQR, is going to come down to those 3 things are going to improve my CQR. Recording all the outings, I can just do that. The playoffs, a lot of that's out of my control. Staying healthy, I'm going to rest a lot, make sure that I'm ready going into spring training, ready to play. Lower than rock rate, all of that stuff. If I do those 3 pitches and make these adjustments and continue to improve the quality of those 3 things, then everything else will just go with it. So we're going to focus very hard on those things. So how does that affect how we are going to approach this season? So for four-seam fastball, I'm going to do 2 things. So you can see the difference here really quickly before we go in of the spin direction and the ways that they affect. Let me break this down. The ways that they affect each single pitch. This is also on Baseball's font. This is fairly new. In 2020 versus 21, if you look at some active spin is spin efficiency. The more active your spin is, you want your slider to be lower because it's spinning away from the y-axis. So the more it spins sideways, the lower the spin efficiency. So I want that to be lower because I want it to break a lot. On my fastball, I want it to be higher because I don't want it to break at all. So if you think of it generally like that, active spin percent on the changeup, 97%. That means that my changeup spins more efficiently than my fastball. 97% total movement in inches. This is called carry. 20%, 20 carry or above is elite, double elite, 2 elites. 17.6 inches last year, 17.7 inches on my fastball. Those are the same. You do not want a slow pitch carrying that much because guys can generally, if they guess right, square it up. Just like if they guess right on the fastball, they square it up. How I'm getting them is they're swinging underneath it because it is higher than they think it's going to be. You don't need that. You don't want guys swinging underneath your changeup up all the time. That is not your goal. So if you have high carry on it, it's very, very hard unless you are touched only in the bottom of the zone. If you're a little bit above the zone, that's when you start to get in trouble. The ball is staying on plane longer and guys are not swinging under it. They're swinging right on it. So if you take this from 20 to 21, I dropped it a little bit, but I tried a 2-seam grip. I tried a 1-seam grip. I tried all kinds of stuff and it was still carrying. What is happening is my middle finger, I throw a 4-seam changeup like this, or I throw a circle changeup like this. My middle finger always stays directly behind the ball, and it's the last finger to touch. It's literally in the center of the ball throwing. So what I've thought about doing is finding out ways to get that middle finger out of the way, out from straight behind the ball and put it on the side on one way. And one way to do that is to try working a little bit on a split change and seeing what we can do there. I'm going to work on possibly adding that to the arsenal this year. I have slow motion video of Carlos Carrasco and Marcus Stroman and how they threw theirs because they have very good ones. And now it's no longer about changing velocities between the fastball and the changeup. It's more about getting the changeup to go down and the fastball to go up. Then you look at the 4-seam fastball, 88% efficiency. So here's 2 examples of guys who have incredibly good carry and I think they get the reputation of having some of the best fastballs in major leagues. Liam Hendricks, Josh Hader, both 95% or higher. And both about 20% carry, 20 inches of carry. So this gets me to believe it now. If you look, 18.5% carry, average fastball velocity, 96.5. My velocity went up, my carry went up almost an entire inch, and I only went up 1% in efficiency. I would like to get that pitch to 95% spin efficiency or active spin. And there's a couple ways to do that. You go look at spin based and observed. Think about it. Think about this as a clock. This is how your hand's positioned. So the more you go like this or the more you go like this, you're going towards 9 and 3. So if you're directly on top of the ball, it's 12. If you're slightly over clockwise, it's 1. So my 4-seam fastball, if you look at this, a lot of the time my spin, my observed is where you release it and then how it spins after that. So I'm like 1245, which is pretty good on behind the ball. But then when it's going, on average, it spins more on an axis at 1. One way to do that, get slightly more high behind the ball and slightly more, instead of being curved here and getting a little bit of a cutter spin, slightly changed a little bit, feeling a little bit better behind the ball, slightly more behind the ball, could add that 5% of carry. If I add that 5% of carry, that we could see another inch of the carry, and the 4-seam could get even better, which I would love to continue to improve my changeup, continue to improve my my 4-seam fastball, and not just kind of sit on where I am. If you look at the changeup, spin based and observed, that was even more on the side. Like I said, I was even more over 1, but the more I moved over, the more the middle finger got directly behind the ball. On the fastball, we need the fork, the middle of your fingers, to be the middle of the ball. But on the changeup, the middle finger became middle of the ball, and that was just more comfortable. So it was carrying more. So what I have to do is I have to find, basically I got to imagine my middle finger is that middle part of the ball. I got to pull down and make slight minute, that we're talking millimeters of adjustment in hand position could increase that vertical movement. And then let's look at the slider. The total movement, if you look, the slider last year was a little harder, but it moved a little bit less. So I got the movement back a little bit, but I didn't throw as hard this year. That was a combination of things. I want it to be around that 85, but I want it to have this year's movement profile with the 8.8 inches of movement instead of the 7 inches of movement. In terms of hand position, that was pretty consistent. The spin base was slightly more sideways last year on the side, 830, and 815 is a little bit more was a little bit more of a true slider spin this year, a little bit more of a curveball spin, so it's more of a slurve, and it got a little bit more depth. I like that, but in terms of these numbers, making those adjustments, I think it's going to come down to commanding it more than it's going to be manipulating how it moves. And then we are going to mess with moving our fingers forward like this, backwards like this, more on top, deeper in the ball, moving the thumb, all the kind of things kind of get the ball to break more this way at times and more this way at times, depending on when I need it. In order to increase the four-seam fastball, I have something called a clean fuego. You can see a link in the below. I'm just going to put it down there. I actually haven't used it yet, but it's something that Sugar Edwin Diaz uses regularly to practice getting behind the ball. And I'm going to just work on throwing that really lightly and seeing how it moves at your hand, because it cuts when you're on the side, and it wobbles if you're somewhere else. So like if it spins really beautifully, kind of like throwing a Frisbee perfectly, that's when you know your release was good and you were level. But if you're sideways or whatever, it tells you. That's what the fuego is supposed to be. It's supposed to like really show drastically, like show your movement based on where your hands position are, more so than a baseball. Baseball's a little more subtle. Fuego is going to tell you how something's going to move in a big way, right? So I plan to use that for the slider, because you can throw it sideways and spin it this way, and the four seam. So I've been implementing drills as I move into November, really light 30-foot and doing net drills in order to get myself feeling good about that. For the changeup, I'm going to continuing to mess around with my four-seam changeup grip, but moving that middle finger, trying to get it in places that it normally isn't to get movement one way or the other. And the split change, I got some drills lined up for there. I will do a video mapping out the split change. I'm gonna take videos of all this stuff so you can see it in real time, but I have a lot of drills based on it. Those are the things I want to accomplish. So, in conclusion, I know this was a very long video. I thought it would be something really fun to put together and do. My 2022 goal is by improving my ability to command my three pitches. I want to continue to improve and build upon their movement profiles and their stuff. And if I combine those two things together, if I up my CQR to 65%, and I feel like I am 65 or more percent of the time every outing, locating and making quality pitches where I want to based on the plan that I made, I'm going to be more successful. Obviously, I'm going to continue to build on the way that my plan works will change if I have a split change or change based on how the stuff moves, but I can make those adjustments. But as long as my stuff is maximized and I'm feeling healthy and my arm is good, and I make every outing that I can make next year, I feel like I'm going to have a special season, and possibly even a career year. And that's always my goal, and it gives me the energy to go and work in the off season. So I know that was a lot. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought about this video. If this is something you enjoy, I'm working on the recovery video on the side. I would love to break down here. I would love to do all kinds of stuff. So keep hitting me with ideas. We want to roll out tons of content here as the World Series goes on too. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. And if you were wondering about anything else, Baseball Savant, the Clean Fuego, and anything else I might be using or doing, ask about it in the comments, and check out the description always if there's links that you're looking for. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Trevor May Baseball channel.